welcome to Connect Tribe's Benteh STEAM Academy. My name is Bree. I'm one of the instructors here at the Fab Lab, and today we're going to talk about 3D pens. In particular, the 3D Doodler. This is a really cool little tool. It has awesome capabilities. You can make three-dimensional objects with it. I've started a couple of different ones that we're going to play with today. This is going to be a Christmas tree. I've also started the walls for a little cabin that's going to be a Christmas ornament. And we're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. But before we do, let's talk about the pen itself. We need to talk about the parts of the pen, which I think are super important. On the pen, we've got an on-off switch. This is where we plug in, and we've got a little light, which tells you whether or not the battery's charged. At the very end is called our extruder. That's the tip of the pen. That's what you draw with, and that's what basically is a very miniature, slightly cooler version of a hot glue gun. So think of this as like a plastic version of a hot glue gun, but it doesn't get as hot, so you're not gonna burn yourself. But you do need to still be cautious of this end because it does get pretty warm. We're gonna turn our pen on. That's by sliding the switch forward. You'll see a little red light. That red light will turn green when your pen is heated enough that it'll actually start pushing filament through. To do that, we simply push this button after we've loaded some filament into the back end. We're gonna use white, and I'm gonna work on the walls of our log cabin. So in order to insert this, you just slide it right in. Don't have to push super hard, and it will, if the pen was completely empty, click when it's all the way in. This pen already has a little bit of filament in it, so we're not gonna see that right away. But we are gonna slide this in so we don't forget or run out. As you can see, my light is green now, so we can get started. And the first thing we're gonna do is we've already made a few of these little frames. That's gonna be our cabin walls. So we'll have our floor, our far wall, our second wall. We can just put that down. And then we're gonna need to make two ends as well as a roof for this whole project. So we're gonna do one more this size because that'll be two roof pieces. And then we're gonna make the smaller sides as well as fill in one of our pieces to make our doors and windows and make it look really cute. So in order to use this, we'll simply push the button once. You don't have to hold it down, just push, click it, and let go. Every time you click this button, it'll either stop or start the filament. So as an example, we'll try it one time. So we're gonna click the button and it'll start pushing out this filament. And as you can see, it's kind of goopy. The faster you move your pen, the thinner your lines are. And at some point, you get too fast and it doesn't stick to anything, and that's just kind of bad news. So, we're cleaning off our tip. Like I said, it's not too hot, but don't stick your hand on it for long. We're gonna peel this little guy right off my workstation, which is also included in our 3D pens. It's this awesome little work mat. Has a circle, has angled lines, and of course it has a grid, so you know how big you're making your pieces. I made my first wall. It's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 high, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wide. So we're gonna do the same thing here. And again, slower you go, the better your extruder will work. So I'm gonna click the button once, and we're just gonna slowly draw a line. This takes a little while, so be patient. It does turn out really cool when you're done with it. Just keep going. And you can see, like, as I'm doing this, that some parts of my line are not as thick as others, and I got too fast at the end and I messed up my line. So we're gonna just cut that right off. I just use my fingernail when it's still warm, and I can just squeeze a little bit more on and keep going from there. Okay, this time we're gonna go a little slower. So we're gonna click our button at the end. We're gonna let it kind of bloop out the last bit. And there's our first line. So that's one of the sides, and we're gonna go, so we did 5 this way, we're gonna go 6 across this way, 5 down, and 6 across again. Pretty basic. So squeeze a little bit out, and then slowly start moving my pen again. If you find that going sideways is more complicated than coming straight down, just rotate your project. That's my favorite way of doing it. You'll find that as you go through the project, you need to be slightly off the mat itself. If you put the pen directly to the mat, it will not have room to squeeze out that filament. So I'm holding mine a very, very small distance away from the mat, just big enough for the actual filament to squeeze out between the pen and the actual mat itself. Okay, So our original piece of filament that was in here ran out. So now I actually get to load this properly. So I'm gonna push it all the way in, and you can kind of feel that little bit of resistance when it's all the way in. And then we can keep going again. All right, we're at the end of that side. Again, I'm gonna rotate and start all over. And like I said, this does take a little bit of time, but don't stress it. All right, last side. Now, as you noticed, I went and rotated it the opposite direction from the direction I was rotating before. And that's so that I don't have anything under my hand that could shift or move my project from the original 3D pen line that I drew. So I moved it so I can actually just have a free movement of my hand next to the actual project itself. And we are so close to being done with this line. I'm actually going back and forth over it because I realized that my line was a little bit too thin. There's no reason you can't add more filament to a thin line, and that's easy by just going back and forth over it a little bit more. So there you go. We have our last piece of the roof. It's getting cool. And now we're gonna actually assemble a couple of these so you guys see how that works. So, cool thing about 3D pens is that they stay warm. The filament that they extrude or push out stays warm for a little bit of time. So we're gonna use a cheat code basically, and we're gonna draw a warm line, and then while it's still hot, we're gonna fold our wall up to a 90-degree angle. And that's gonna be the easiest way of getting this. If you try to hold it together like this, you're doing a little bit too much. But this is the easy way. So you lay it down next to your piece. This also works for hot gluing two pieces together too. Hope you know that. But here we go. We're gonna run this line all the way down. Actually, we're gonna just stop right there because I don't even need to go that far to make it start its angle. And there you go. We now have technically a three-dimensional object. So I can go back through and I can add a little bit more filament to make sure it's really reinforced where I want it to be. And we want to make sure our corners are super strong because they're going to hold this whole structure together. So a little bit of extra filament in there is not a bad thing to have. And we're almost done. Actually, my poor pen is running out of battery. I've been playing with this for a while, so your pen should last you about an hour to an hour and a half of work time. So this one's a little bit slow, but that's okay. And there you go. We have a solid right angle. And now we're gonna put the other side on. So same thing I did before. We're gonna lay down our piece completely flat. We're gonna run a line of filament, and then we're gonna angle it up while it's still warm. But we're actually gonna just kind of tack it on. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a welder. But the way they like to do it is they like to just do spots to hold everything in place. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna tack on the ends, tack in the middle, and then we're gonna just angle it up, and that's gonna hold it in place for us. Like that. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it is flexible, but if you get your general shape, then you can reinforce it and kind of manipulate it to be exactly the angle you want it to be. Just like with hot gluing, be really careful on your corners and your edges, because the last thing you want to do is melt one of the lines you've already drawn. And I gotta get all this extra filament out of my way. Look at that, it becomes a spider web if you play with it too long. Get off of me. Okay. You think that's what Peter Parker made his webs out of? No, it's not. He definitely used something else. All right, so we're almost done with this side. Okay, so now we have our two side walls and our floor done. So now what we need to do is we need to put our roof on. So that's gonna be this angle. So what do we think the easiest way to do this will be? I'll give you a hint. It's the exact same as putting the sides on. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna lay them next to each other. Hopefully the flat side's down. And we're just gonna run a line of filament. And when it's done, we're gonna angle it the way we want to, and then tack it to the sides of the house. like that. And we've got the start of our roof. And I kind of like it to look just like this. So I think that'll look good. I'm just gonna reinforce that seam along the top, and then we're gonna stick it to the actual roof. Okay. I'm kind of squishing the slightly warm filament. It's not hot by any means, but it's slightly warm. I'm kind of squishing it to really fill in those like gaps. And now I can take it and I can tack it on if I wanted to. And we're gonna go ahead and do that. So we're just gonna take our pen, put a little bloop, and it'll stay. Same thing on the other side. I'm gonna kind of squish it to make sure it stays nice and tight. There we go. So we do the same thing to the other side. Kind of hold it at the same angle. I'm gonna rotate our house around so I can reach it a little bit easier. And we have a little house. Pretty cool, huh? So now we have our frame, but we still have open ends and our sides are completely open. So instead of just filling it all in white, I decided that I wanted to do my sides to have actual like shingling looks to them. So, or maybe brick. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a grid using a different color. I think I'm gonna do blue bricks. I think that'd be really cute. So what I'll do is I'll make a grid the same size that I was just doing. So we know it's gonna be 6 by 5. So what I wanna do, all the way in, feel a little resistance, and then here we go. We're gonna draw little brick shapes. And I'm trying to make sure that I only have like one line worth of everything on here. Okay. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the same size rectangle. We're gonna make it so that it lines up with the middle of the row above it. So now I know I still have to do the rest of this brick, a half brick, and then I'm gonna go all the way down to make the entire siding of my building. So, that's why this grid is really helpful. It helps you keep track of exactly what you need to build to make your projects line up, which is pretty fun. Of course, in the other video, we did a much simpler project, which is just a flat ornament. This is gonna be a very elaborate ornament because now some of you may be thinking, Bree, why don't you just do long lines and then divide your lines? Well, the real texture that I'm hoping to get is that each brick is somewhat slightly rounded on the inside, which seems a little bit more like natural bricks that you would make, which is the only reason I haven't actually just done a long line and then divided the lines. I thought it'd look cooler. But it can work either way. So, like I said, up to you how you do your projects. And you can see when I get too close, I start to pick up the filament by accident from the other bricks. So you gotta remember to keep your distance. And so I just rotated my project again to make it a lot easier for me to do my design. Because remember what we talked about? It's a little bit easier if you know the best way for you to keep track of your filament. Ooh, I just ran out again. All right. So I have all my filament organized, so it's really easy to grab the one I want and keep going. Okay, so we are almost there. We've just got one more line to go. Okay, so I just messed up because I got really, really, really close and all the filament kind of stuck to the tip of my pen, and you can kind of see where I messed up. So I'm gonna clip that off. Again, just use your fingernails, or if you have scissors, you can wait till it's cool and then just cut it off. But I am, gonna rip it right off the board. It's okay. It's super easy to stick it back down. How do we do that? We put more filament on it. Cool. All right. We have our little brick pattern. Not bad for first try. So I realized it took a long time. So what are some ways that we can make this a little bit easier on myself? Number one, I don't have to do bricks, but I've already started. And so now it would look silly if I didn't do bricks on the other sides. So we can keep going. And what I'm gonna do though, before we do that, is I'm gonna attach it to this house. So, just like I did on the roof, we're gonna tack it and then fill it. So you just get a little piece of warm filament on there and kind of squish it on. I'm gonna do the same at the bottom. We'll just do all 4 corners this way. And then we'll go around and do the line of the bottom, sides, and top. All right, so now we've got our sides, or your one side on. We're gonna run this filament all the way down the side of this. Really making sure that every single line is perfectly filled in, and that creates a cohesive building. I'm gonna go back up one more time just to make sure I got all the spots filled in. Turn off my 3D pen while I switch sides and do the same to the bottom. Now, if you're really good with a 3D pen, there we go, our side is attached. So now we can do another side over here. And this side, we're gonna actually build in our doors and windows and everything else. So if we know how big our doors are gonna be, and I kinda do, I'm gonna make it 2 of these squares tall. That's actually the first thing I'm gonna do, is draw out my door. Okay, so we have a door and we have, let's fix our window. Door, and let's do a big window. Okay, we're done with our side. It's a little sloppy because that was a lot harder than I thought it was, but we have our side. We have a door, we have a little window, and now we can attach it. Since this is still kind of warm, I'm not gonna bother with tacking it because I can just kind of stick it on there. I'm trying to make sure there's a lot of filament holding this guy together. And there you have it, folks, our tiny little Christmas cabin. Now, that was kind of a cool little project, and it took a long time, but it was actually pretty simple in the elements. We used a lot of flat pieces, and we just kept gluing our flat pieces together to make it a 3-dimensional object. So from all of us here at Benteh STEAM Academy, we want to wish you the happiest of holidays, and we hope that you guys remember to keep creating.